Okay. All right. Let me check my audio, and then we'll get started. Okay. Dope. All right. So, session 2, right? Session 2 for October, right? Effective studying. So, what we're gonna do today, right, is get into just actually starting to make an image with some of the things that we understand from here, right? Doing your studies, you do as many as you feel like you need, do as many as you want. I didn't really take these that much further. I took the gold shoulder thing, the Jamie Lannister arm, 10% further, and then I did one of the Kingsguard helmets from one of the flashback scenes, and then I wanted to kind of figure out some colors, so I did a quick, just kind of like plein air thing, really quick, like just one layer or like two. It was like 2 layers, something like that. And then we just kind of went from there. So when you're doing these studies, right, there's a couple things that you want to understand, like when you're, trying to like figure things out, right? When you have a subject, when you have a general idea that you're kind of going for, find references that kind of help push those ideas, right? If you want to get better at armor, you don't have to paint every single detail. You want to really hone in on like, what am I trying to do, right? For example, when I was doing the armor call out right here, right? It was mostly because I can render details pretty well, right? Pretty easily. At this point from here, I can like kind of take it further, and I know I can do that. It's this initial part where it's like having it feel like kind of one solid piece, but also like that it's segmented pretty well, right? Because if I were to paint each piece individually, right, there's always this like disjointedness that happens. And so whenever I'm, setting up my images, I want to make sure that that kind of starting kind of baseline is okay before I can, before I can like push this further. I don't really want to worry about like scratches and details so much. I mostly want to worry about making sure that like the process works out okay, right? Same thing with the plein air here, right? I can take this further, but it's not really about doing the plein air. I'm just trying to make sure I get these colors right, make sure like these tones and these ideas are working okay. So when I go into the painting, I kind of have that initial start, and then my skill kind of kicks in and like fills in the rest after the fact, right? When you're doing these studies, understand you don't have to do full renders. You don't even have to do the full thing, right? A lot of these were cuts from either from a still or a film or whatever, right? And just do the parts that you want, right? Because that's the parts you actually need to kind of make happen. So just know that, right? I think we kind of get tied into this idea of when I'm doing a study for a thing, I need to study the whole thing. I have an image, so I paint the whole image. It's like you only need parts of it because that's the parts that matter for your illustration, right? Because we have something in mind, and we're kind of like just trying to figure out how to get through this process easier, right? And you can do as many or as few as you want, right? The more you do, the easier things do tend to get, because it's like the more over time, not like in one sitting, but keep doing them. Like if you do 1 or 2 per painting, after 20 paintings, you have like 200 studies, you know what I mean? Like, or whatever it is. So it takes a while to kind of build up to that point, but just understand this is a lifelong process of like, as you figure out paintings, you kind of doing studies, and then it helps the next painting, so on and so forth, right? So by no means are these like the best studies we've ever seen, right? They're not even like, I'm not even attempting to try to make this like a strong show of like, my artistic ability, right? Because that's not really the point of this. The point is to figure out, how would I do a weird pattern like this? How would I do like paneling on armor, right? How would I set up these colors? And then once I get that, I'm like, cool. I know how to paint rocks. I know how to paint grass. I know how to paint sky. I know how to paint metal, right? It's very easy at that point. So just kind of understand that. Understand that studies can be whatever it is that you want it to be. But remember, be intent, like have an intent behind your studies, right? Really make sure that when you're doing the study, you know why you're doing it. Because if you don't know why you're doing it, then you're just wasting time at that point, right? So with that in mind, let's get into today. So I have a sketch here. I just did a quick sketch. This is like, I don't know, like 5 minutes before stream started. And I was just kind of drawing and just trying to figure out like my proportions and things like that. Like I was saying, I want some sort of creature, some sort of rider type of person, and then it's going to be in some sort of environment, right? So when you look at this, we have a plein air with the color palette. We have armor studies in terms of how I kind of want the armor to go. And then I have, just a general idea of like, what the sketch is. So all we got to do at this point is pull all these together and kind of make it happen, right? And what I want to explain or show everybody, right? This isn't the coolest drawing in the world by any means. It's not even good by most standards. But what I will say is this is more important than like showing the, I guess, how good of an artist you are in terms of like your line drawing skills, right? It really is like showing how you're piecing all this together, because I have the reference for the armors that I kind of like, I have the reference for the lighting and tone, and then I have the sketch, right? And for every artist out there, right, like trying to get better at what you do, it's the planning beforehand that gets you good, right? This is what your art director does for you, right? Whenever you start working, you're probably gonna get sketches, right? More often than not, like a lot of junior artists, they'll receive sketches because you're kind of like more of an extension of somebody's hand in the beginning, right? Like your skill set and your thinking really isn't quite there yet, and so there's I don't want to say less trust, but the art director and stuff is kind of less trusting of your overall skill. So what they'll usually do is just hand you sketches and be like, all right, take this, pose it out, do what you need to do, and finish it essentially, right? But they gave you the idea. And so for like, artists out there, as you're getting better, start figuring out that for yourself, right? Look at some of the assignments that you've done, right? This is mostly like entry-level artists to like maybe mid-level artists, right? Look at what you've done, right? The work that someone gave you where you did it for a client and they said, hey, here's the reference board, here's the sketch, here's this, and then simulate that for yourself. Because so many times I see students kind of get to this stage without knowing what your lighting scenario is and without knowing what your design references are, right? It's like you're not really pulling all this information together, and it can be very slow because you're having to figure all this out on the fly, right? Figure it out beforehand, think it through, right? This stage right now really isn't about the skill in which you can draw. It's about how good of a plan is this drawing, right? Does the composition work? Is the idea even worth pursuing? After that, right, then we get into quality. We can start painting and stuff like that, right? So we've talked about planning before. I'm not going to iterate on it too much. I will kind of talk about what's going on here and kind of why I went with the way I did, and then we'll go from there. So, cool. Let's talk about this. I have a sketch here. Yeah, Riley says Lizard Rider. Yeah, so I wanted to do something a little bit out of my comfort zone. For those of you that know me, I don't really do a lot of creature design stuff, and I don't really do a lot of like character work either. Not that I don't ever do it, right? I do it for work. I just don't always post it. And so like I'll do stuff like this, and it's usually fine, but it's not like my most confident work. And so now, right, what I want to kind of show is how I would actually get through this, right? Because I get assignments like this all the time where, there's, the character designer is busy, or whoever's supposed to be doing this stuff is kind of like doing the bigger thing, and here's the secondary one, or here's whatever, right? And just being a well-versed artist is kind of what you want to be. Like, you don't have to be a master at everything, but you do want to be able to get yourself through a lot of things, right? Like, you want to be able to work through the process and understand, like, how can I get an image to a good point, regardless of what topic it is, right? For me, my strong suits are architecture, environment, and vehicles and props and things like that. That's usually what they pay me for. That's usually why I'm there. But that doesn't stop me from doing creatures, doing characters, doing whatever. I'll do it and it's gonna be a professional level, maybe I might be a little bit slower. Maybe it might require me to kind of focus a little bit harder. But overall, right, that's kind of what we're going for. So what we're doing here, let me break this down. So I did this like super rough sketch. Let me just kind of show you this. I kind of plotted out where the head goes right here. Let me turn that up a bit. That's really bad. I was just kind of like scribbling, you know, I was just like noodling around. You can even see me like just making lines and stuff, right? So what we have here is I have the kind of like lizard, dragon thing's head. I'm not really quite sure if I want to do like this fire mane type thing. I don't know. Well, maybe that's a little too weird. But then there's like some sort of rider. He has some sort of like long weapon, right? Just because, you know, if you're riding on something, it's easier than like a dagger, right? And then the tail was right here. And then I have like the leg, and then I have the environment kind of like pushing us towards him, right? And then the cloud back here probably pushing us this way. I had the kind of weapon going to this direction, this way, hoping that I can kind of create like this X on the character, right? That was the initial plan. That's kind of where things started. From here, I kind of started refining things, and I really only refined a couple different spots, right? And I want to show you what I did. The spots that I'm like least confident about, like the head, you know, the kind of shoulder, arm, leg area, right? And the way the tail bends, I kind of figured that out a little bit. And so with that, I changed the direction of the weapon. I thought that was a little less important because I did like the tail kind of giving us that directionality, right? Cloud still there in the back. And then having like this kind of flame thing kind of bend us this way, right? So now I have all these kind of arrows. There's gonna be a cloud right there, kind of pointing us that way, right? And then we have like the path and, you know, various things like that, kind of like pointing us there and then up the leg, right? And so when I'm designing this, I'm thinking about how do I get the eye to move through the frame. And for those of you like that are you know, more often than not, if you're watching this stream or if you know me as a person, generally speaking, you're probably an environment artist, right? Or you have interest in environment. Not that character artists aren't interested in kind of what I'm doing, but more often than not, it's mostly environment artists, right? And so these ideas, it's the same ideas that we have whenever we are setting up our environments, right? We talk about leading lines, we talk about mountains, we talk about, you know, buildings, doing these things, cast shadows, so on and so forth. When you do characters, when you do creatures, right, don't think of it as a character or creature. It's just a thing, you know what I mean? It's just weird architecture. It's just a weird mountain. That's all it ever is. It's like, how do you get your eye to go through a scene, right? The image has shapes, it has directionality, it has gestures. And how do I get the audience to look where I want them to look? The same idea applies to literally everything, from singular character designs without an environment to you know, wide environment shots, right? It doesn't really matter what you're doing. You want the audience to look somewhere. So just remember those basics, right? I think oftentimes we get tied into this idea that because it's not in our comfort zone, it's like not something that we always do, it's a different thing, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, this creature is, you know, I don't really do creatures, so I don't really know how to compose them. No, your composition skills still work regardless. But now you just need to get a little bit better at anatomy or something, you know. But a lot of those are just detail things. You can get by pretty well with just like basic like form understanding, right? Like Viscom and just lighting skills, right? So with that in mind, from here, I'm gonna start setting up this painting, right? We're gonna start blocking this out, getting the shapes to look okay. That might require me to draw a couple things out a little bit further. You know, we'll see how that goes, but yeah. So let's get into this. Today's gonna be a little bit longer of a demo day, just so we can like chat and do stuff and all that. But yeah, let's see. Okay. If there's any questions, right, hit me up. There's a lot more time today to kind of talk and you know, do stuff. So if anybody has anything to say or anything that you want to like talk about, definitely hit me up. So, yo, Rolling Gaming. It's been a while. It has been a while. All right, let's turn that down. Boom, there you go. Sick. All right. So, pro tip for everybody, whenever you're doing your design, something that I like to do, right? This works particularly well for figure drawing. Figure drawing or like creature design and stuff like that. Whenever you're drawing your like appendages, right? Or like the head or like, you know, where you want certain things. You ever draw like the body and then you start like kind of making the arm, you start doing the thing, and then you're like, oh, and then the hand ends up over here somehow. You know what I mean? Like that happens like a lot, right? Because, you know, you're just kind of following it along and then the hands end up in a weird spot. The best advice I've ever heard when it comes to this stuff is just draw the hand first. Draw the head, draw the hand, draw whatever it is that you want. If I want the spear tip to be right here, I'll draw it right there and then connect it to the body, right? Same thing with the arm. If the hand's right here, how can I design this to where, you know, like it connects to the arm correctly, right? Start with the hand first, and then it gets you into a better spot. It's a bit tricky to kind of just like build it. If you're like good, if you do this naturally, right? That's, you know, that's cool. You do you. But for those of you that like struggle with that, it's a really good tip that I use a lot. I place the key points first. And then all the like the linking things, like the arms, like the forearm to the upper arm to like the torso, right? All of those, you have a lot of leeway when it comes to those, especially with like foreshortening. Like all you have to do is just say, oh yeah, it's just foreshortening more, and then you're kind of in a good spot. So cool. Let's see. Let's do this. Boom. What I'm doing here is the same thing I've always done, right? I'm gonna start blocking out my graphic read just to make sure everything is kind of working out okay. Nothing really that crazy. This is generally speaking the same process that we kind of always do, but I just want to show you how similar of a process this really is when it comes to you know, actually making scenes that I would say are a little more like uncomfortable, right? So boom, let's go something like that. That's the arm, that's the torso, that's the other hand. Cool. Got the neck here, the head. Boom. I do the lizard dude first. Boom. Anybody going to Lightbox this coming month? Let's go. That head looks weird. It's funny, like whenever you design it with like something else, right? Where like there's like something like that you have to put on separately, and then whenever you like don't have it there, he just looks bald. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Maybe I'll have something else on there. Boom. Oh, as I'm doing this, right? I talked about this last week, but I want this to be more of like a fantasy kind of illustration, right? I want this to be something that it doesn't necessarily need to make sense, right? I think the stuff that we've been doing up until now has been a lot of like just doing a lot of, I don't know, just like logical things, right? Like design, right? It has a lot of like, especially like sci-fi things where you kind of have to really make sure things work. You know what I mean? I want to kind of, I don't want to say move away from that, right? But a lot of things like being okay with the idea that something doesn't necessarily need to always make sense. Like a lizard that's on fire, that's a straight up Pokemon, right? But that's okay. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that right now because I'm tired of design, man. Let's be real. It's funny. I actually don't like design that much. For those that know me personally, like especially like in a studio setting, I don't really like design. Like I do it, right? I don't say I excel at it, but I do it. But I'm just like, I hate design, dude. It's so boring. It's so boring. I don't know. How do you guys feel about it?
just really, really hard.
Yeah.
It it wears on. I feel like it wears on you quickly. Um, I don't know. I'm learning more. There's so many different kinds of concept designers out there.
Yeah.
There's people who really just illustrate. There's people who really just photo batch, and there's people who really design is all they ever really do.
Yeah.
Their portfolio is like 90% line drawings and local color. Like Colin Geller, one of my past teachers, is like that over at id Software. Just he used to do a lot of environment stuff, but it's just so many props, so many hero weapons. I don't know. I wonder if he ever gets tired of it. He's certainly good at it.
Yeah. I think like I'll do it every once in a while because at work, I mean, even at the places that I like, animation in particular, right? They don't they don't really do design that much. It's not they're not doing design, but it's like it's a different kind of design. I find like with concept art, for example, like I with concept art jobs that I'll do, it's very much like form language and like cut lines, and we're kind of like fiddling over like just things like that, right? But then like in animation, it's not that it doesn't matter. Like it does, but there is a bigger emphasis on like story and like just compositions and just the understanding of the mood and tone, like designing through like color, through shape design, like less about combining form languages and more about making sure that the overall tone and mood is correct. You know what I mean? And then like setting up like a scary space through like shape language, where it's like making things sharper, like the more basic level of design. But like in games and stuff, it's always like mixing form languages and coming up with like the coolest shapes, and I find that I don't say I find that boring, but it is it's not exciting for me. It's funny as we get through like 3 months of like straight up design. I'm like, you're hearing this now. It's like, this guy's a fake. I think I did it so much starting. I just get tired of it. It's usually not that exciting. You know what I mean? Because like even like the best designs, I feel like when you're watching a movie or like doing a thing or whatever, right? With even the coolest designs, like isolated, they feel so like, I don't know, just not that impactful, right? Like when it's just isolated, right? It's when they're in the moment that feels really interesting and very like I don't know, it feels very you kind of hit that tone that that you feel whenever you like see a certain thing, right? The Millennium Falcon, for example, right? Like it's exciting because of the moments that it's in and the things that happen during the movie, not necessarily like the straight up like 3/4 view of it. You know what I mean? Like it's a good design. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like, is that the reason we like it? You know what I mean? I always like question that every time I do design, like thinking about like, is this actually something that people are going to like, really, I guess, really look at, right? Like, are they really going to sit here and be like, is this the shape that's gonna get them to like just lose their minds? More often than not, it really isn't. It sounds weird, but it's like trying to find that balance of like, when do we stop like, I guess, drawing and just messing with all these like tiny shapes that no one's gonna look at, versus like when you actually see it on the screen, seeing it doing its thing, right? That's what people kind of like get behind more often than not. Sorry, my cat's about to drop a load. I'm about to get bombed out over here, guys.
Feels like
There is one. Go ahead, Riley.
Oh, it feels like, at least with environment design, like you almost are, for the most part, only doing your job if people don't notice your work.
Yeah.
Like if they're noticing it, it's because it looks bad or feels awkward. Otherwise, it's like you could design the coolest storeroom, but no one's gonna really care they're just gonna walk through it. But if something looks awkward, then they're gonna be like, "This looks like shit."
Oh yeah, totally, right? It's like if it stands out too much, if your design is like too, I don't say like iconic, but like if it's too out there, people are like look at it, like why is it like that? You know what I mean? And it's such a weird situation for us to be in because we're always trying to create the most interesting thing, but especially because the thing that's supposed to be interesting is usually not our design. It's the thing that's in our designs, right? Like especially for environment artists. It's like, you know, you're supposed to kind of support the character, support, you know, whatever it is that you're trying to like show off in that scene, you know, because environment's usually not the reason we're looking at watching a movie or something. It's just the setting that we're all kind of in. Right? That's a good point. Good point. I don't know if I like that. That's weird, dude. What are you gonna say?
I was just
Jacob?
I was just gonna say there was one design that just really got me going in the last few years. Have you seen Dune, Kenny? The new Dune?
I haven't seen the new one yet. I should. I need to. Shit.
Well, the ornithopter in
Oh,
that
yeah.
movie was just. I told my wife, I said, I'm gonna say something really controversial. I said, I think this might be the best piece of sci-fi design we've ever seen. Might even be better than like the Millennium Falcon. And people get, you know, offended because of the history and stuff, but I don't know if you've read, I guess you haven't read the book if you haven't seen the movie, but it was imagined like exactly as it was written. And not only that, it was just a beautiful piece of design. I mean, a spaceship that flutters like a dragonfly. And Denis Villeneuve did an excellent job of not just showing what it does, but showing like the spirit of the machine.
Yeah.
George Hull and Collie Wirtz collaborated on this design. It's just a beautiful piece of design, in my opinion.
See, this is what I mean when I say, is it the design or is it the moment, right? Because because I've seen this like these clips and stuff on this design, you know, and like the design no doubt looks like cool, right? It's pretty clear where these references are coming from, right? You know, you think like military, like almost like attack copter, right? And then you see like dragonfly, and then, you know, other things, right? And like, no doubt the design is good, but is it the scene that it shows up in? Because I can hear it, like when you like think ornithopter, right? Like you can hear it. It's like it gives you the same vibe as a helicopter, but then it like changes it, right? It's outside of design that I feel makes it cool. Like the visuals are interesting, don't get me wrong, but it's the moments that you experience this that I find the most interesting. You know what I mean? Like it's like how you go through the moments during the movie that I feel is like the part that makes it the most interesting, right? Or even like I don't know. It's just like it's a weird thing because with design, it can be a couple different ideas, right? It can be, you know, partially about I guess the design itself, right? Like it could definitely be that, but it could also be something that has to do with the way the audience is experiencing this this subject. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I kind of fall into the zone of like, well, which one matters more, right? Which one is going to be the thing that really gets people to you know, grab hold of this design and really kind of latch onto it, right? Like for example, I think one of the most iconic designs in like, I guess like just in our history, right, is like the lightsaber designs, right? Because everyone knows what a lightsaber looks like. But does anybody actually know what it looks like? Like people know, right? Like it's a handle with a beam saber, right? But if I told you to draw it out without looking at reference, could you do it? You know, probably not, right? Because this, you know, you'd probably get like, because what I remember, just right off the top of my head, and this is like as an artist that's like studied this stuff before, I remember this part, right? That lip thing that's like on the edge. This is specifically Luke's saber, I guess Anakin's saber, whatever you think about, that whoever owns it. But like if I were to design it, I just remember a rectangle, and then I remember like this thing, and then I think I remember like a block being at the bottom, and I'm not sure what side it's on. But like just trying to remember that, right? You get a couple different cues, but then there's like the little like stuff. There's all these tiny things in there. It's like, do you truly remember that? Like, so, when I say, does it actually matter what the cut lines and stuff are doing, right? Like, you don't remember these things. Nobody. And as an artist, this is me as a designer that is like, that studies and does this stuff for a living. I don't remember it. Like, just a normal, average, everyday person will never get that. You know what I mean? Because, some of them will, but those are like the mega fans, right? We're talking about like average moviegoers. You know what I mean?
Have you ever thought about directing, Kenny? Because just the way you're talking, it's like, I don't know. It seems to me that you're, really interested in like the sum of the parts more than any specific thing. It is funny. I'm getting less and less interested in art as like, I guess, okay, I don't say art. Less and less interested in 2D art, like the act of image making, and more interested in the in like, I guess the act of making like a more final product. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I'm not doing anything about it. I'm not saying I'm not doing anything about it. But the idea is, I think like seeing like what we can do with art, right? With like our skills, because I think for me, something I've been feeling a lot, especially lately, is how limiting, I guess, our the 2D medium can kind of feel. You know what I mean? Like we create a cool image and then it kind of ends there, right? It doesn't move, it doesn't do anything, and usually it's just an informant for the next thing, right? Just whoever's next in line for the design process, right? Like the modeler or VFX or whatever. And I don't know. I've been kind of feeling like, maybe taking this further in some sort of way. I don't know what that means though, right? I don't know how to go about that, right? We could, the idea is you can make shorts, you could kind of do things like that. I'm not sure if I don't know where I kind of fall on that, but it has been intriguing me just a little bit more lately. So I guess technically, yes, maybe. It's hard to say. I say that because I've always wanted to be a film director. Concept design for me is just like an in to getting into that eventually, because being a film director in Hollywood is so challenging. It's just about, I tell my wife I could not have found something more impossible to get into. It's so difficult to become a big blockbuster director that I think the best thing to do is just find an avenue in entertainment and kind of work your way into it. But yeah, directing is a whole different thing. It's much more about the sum of the parts and the overall story, and you really could have someone else probably design the ornithopter like you said. Okay, maybe not for the ornithopter because that's a very unique case. Yep. But design for directors is a little bit more of a placeholder than maybe concept artists would like to think.
Yeah, I mean, because every time I've interacted with directors, there's absolutely, there's some directors that are very particular about some design things, absolutely, right? But a majority, maybe like the 5 or 6 different directors I've like truly interacted with, this is like me directly interacting with them, like the 5 or 6 directors I've interacted with, I think one actually cared about like that's not that they don't care, I'm not saying it like that, but when you like the variations and like design ideas and stuff, it never makes it to the director, right? Everything I've done for Netflix, and not that it doesn't make it, but like I'll do maybe like 5 or 6 variations of an idea. My art director / production designer will kind of sort through them and then show the best one idea to the director, and it gets approved, right? Because for one, it's compartmentalizing, right? The director just can't handle having a hand in every single thing like that. So, you give the art task to the better person suited to it, which is probably the production designer. But generally speaking, they're really not that picky when it comes to design from what I've seen. I'm not saying that's always the case. I'm not saying that's, truly like the only experience you'll ever get, but they usually just don't care because they're focusing on other things. And this is what I was saying before. Like for those of you, like when you're designing, you think about that moment, right? It's because they're thinking about the moment. They're designing, like they're approving based off of like how this scene kind of is supposed to fit in their head, right? Like they have some ideas in terms of like what they want some of the moments to kind of be like, and if your design gets in the way of that, that's when they have the issue. That's when like a lot of the problems really come into play. But if it doesn't get in the way of the issue, right, or if it hits the tone and mood that they're going for, it's like usually it's fine. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where. Who's this? Let's see. Hold up. That's odd. I just got spam on the YouTube chat. Anyway, but yeah, it's like they usually just don't care. It's they usually like, oh yeah, that works. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the design. Like for example, if you're designing like a prop, right, like a box or some shit like that, right? They'll open the box. Like the idea would be they need to open the box like a normal kind of chest, for example, right? And so we as designers were like, dude, yeah, you could like spin it and rotate it and like you could do this thing. And they're like, no, man, we just need a box that just lid latches up, right? And as long as that lid latches up, they don't care about the screws. They don't care about the cut lines. They don't care about how anodized this metal is. You know what I mean? They're just like, yeah, that's great. It serves a purpose. It hits an idea, and the better that as we as designers can get at that part, your approval process, your approval system. Oh my god, it gets so much easier. It's like once you get that, once you're like, oh yeah, I guess they really don't care about that stuff. It's things get so much smoother, So. His butt on fire? Is that weird? So like now I'm trying to like figure out other things going on with this creature, right? I'm just like playing with it, just seeing what happens, seeing what I can kind of make happen here, and see like what the good stuff is. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. Also, like as I'm doing these things, something that I like to do with my design, especially at this phase. It really is like you have moments of graphic design, right? Where like right now, obviously this is just we're still in the blockout phase, but the graphic read is pretty strong. Like we know exactly what's happening here. There's really no question as to like if that graphic read is working or not, right? Because if I just stick to this, generally speaking, we're probably gonna be okay, right? So now it's really about how do I make this feel, how do I kind of add elements to kind of push graphic read from certain things, right? So what I'm doing here is trying to show, for one, I'll pull up a line brush, not pink. Like showing this section right here where that arm kind of connects to the body by like, because if you just have it all one solid thing, it's not that it won't happen, because you're going to be adding value to this. You're going to be kind of making this thing look volumetric, right? It's not that won't happen, but now we have opportunities to kind of show it off in the graphic stage, right? Where we have a harness here and you'll see the harness on the other side, meaning there's a overlap there, really kind of pushing some of these ideas, showing like that even though there's a neck here, right? Trying to finish off that kind of like muzzle section with this kind of darker value, right? Really pushes like when it goes like into the body, you're still showing off that graphic read. And even then I might even add something to like this side here. This way I still get the graphic read that I need, but you're kind of pushing that material a bit further. Same with this here where I move the fire up and onto this like back thigh piece. because I want this like line to kind of overlap, right? That's what you're looking for. It's little moments of volume, little moments of overlap. If we can do this in the graphic read stage, it gets a lot easier to kind of like paint it and kind of, you know, make it look cooler now when there's not a lot of detail versus later when you need it to, when you're just trying to use like you're kind of noodling around trying to make things kind of work. You know what I'm saying? If it pops out now, it's gonna work later as well, you know? I don't think I want this that dark. I think I just got my first spam in the chat on YouTube. I think does that mean I made it? Is that a thing? Is that the sign? Is that the? I had to block a person. That's crazy. I don't think they were real, to be honest. But you know, maybe I'm not real. Who knows? Notice me. It's what is it like? Block bots and Squarespace ads. That's how you know. That's it. You're that's the mark of a successful YouTube channel. I can finally
been sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh god,
you'll never quite be there.
It's funny. Like I've seen so many people showing that ad, and I don't know a single Raid player. You know what I mean? Like I don't know anybody that plays Raid. Maybe somebody here does. And let me know if you do. But there's not a single person I know that plays Raid. We reference them a lot though. When I was working in a mobile game studio, because basically, for everybody, right? The industry kind of works in a very similar way, regardless of where you're at. Whatever project is doing the best, right? Whatever studio is like currently killing it, everybody else is trying to make their version of it, right? So like it was constantly like, what's Raid doing? What's Raid doing? And I was like, that sucks, dude. That's so bad. It's just like, how about we do something cool? You know, how about let's not aim for second place, you know? But you know, I'm just a concept artist, man. What do I know? What do I know?
I'm 100% guilty of thinking that my next project should be inspired by Wukong. Not the same setting, but
that,
you know,
dude, that's what I'm telling you. Everybody, listen. If you don't listen to anything else I ever say ever again, listen to this one thing. If you want the quickest way to get in the industry, right? Just understand what they want. Everybody wants to win Game of the Year because Game of the Year means money, right? Game of the Year means people bought your shit, right? So when a game comes out, right, and is like the shit, like it's doing something that nobody else, and don't pick like the games that are just like, oh, Overwatch 2 is great. No, it's the same as Overwatch 1. Don't do that, right? It's not the thing that's going to be unless you want to work for Blizzard specifically, right? But if you want a more well-rounded portfolio, and it's not that you don't care what studio you work for, but it's more of like, I'm okay with any studio. I just, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're trying to go for a specific studio, go to that studio. But if you're kind of like whatever about what studio you want to work at, find whatever project won Game of the Year and do your own version of that. You don't have to do Wukong specifically, but look at their concept art, because that concept art that is out from that studio, that's what everybody wants. Because I guarantee you, right? I haven't heard anything yet because I haven't really been doing that much freelance lately, other than the ones I'm already doing. But like, every studio is gonna be like, oh shit, we need our version of Wukong. We need, you know, Viking version of Wukong, right? Which is just God of War. But, right, and even then, thinking about, I haven't played Wukong, so I don't truly know, but like I mean, there is vibes. It's very similar to God of War, right? Am I crazy for saying that? Who's played Wukong here?
I have.
Right? Is it? I'm not saying it's it's God of War with Monkey King. But I mean, is it right?
It's definitely like a little bit similar, yeah, for sure.
The-
But I feel like they take like the real Chinese like cultural elements, you know, and like the old myths and stuff, and then
Yeah.
just kind of like push it to the next level. So like where you have a Buddha shrine. It's like a Buddha shrine in the mountain, and there's like a billion Buddhas, and they're like crazy, and that kind of thing.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the same premise that that God of War has, right? It's Greek slash I guess now Viking, Norse mythology, right? And pushed to the absolute max, right? So it's the same like base concept. So if you just track that back one, right, where it's like you have God of War, which keeps killing it every year that it gets released, and then the next game that wins Game of the Year is just basically a redesign project of God of War, except instead of Kratos, it's the Monkey King, right? It's like you can kind of see how that's working out, and then the same thing with like Last of Us. When Last of Us came out, right? Everybody wanted to do their version of that, and so it was like everyone's just making portfolio projects based off of that art, because when they hire, right, they're going to be like, hey, we're looking to make another Wukong project, but our own spin, our own version of it, because we're mega original, and we're like trying to break the mold is what they always say. But then it's just a redesign project of whatever already exists, right? And so when they do that and they see your work and they're like, oh wow, yeah, that looks exactly like what we're trying to do, it's because they're trying to do Wukong and you try to do that, right? So just, if you're looking for work and you don't really care where you work, try it, see how it goes. Because that's exactly what happened in animation, right? Everybody was like, hey, Spider-Verse, did a thing, like kind of, went crazy and did their own project or whatever, and it was beautiful and it was amazing. And then everybody that could do a little bit of like that look right off the bat, instant hires, right? Like I think like 4 of my like full-time work jobs I got just because I did like some work that kind of resembled it, because I was really into the movie at the time, so like I liked where it was going, and so I just did some, I don't want to say not like fan art or anything, but like my own thing with that style. And then like 3 or 4 of the jobs came in, and they're like, oh yeah, we're looking for something just like that. I was like, oh, how did I know? So I mean, you can do whatever you want, right? But I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? It doesn't take it doesn't take a wizard to understand like that. They just want money. These studios, like they just want to make what's popular within their like field, right? If they're first person shooters, look at the most popular first person shooter right now, whatever game that is, and then make your version of that, right? Look and your version of that usually means your topic, their style, right? Like it's because that's what they need. They don't need a Chinese mythology project. They need a project that has the same fidelity as like the Wukong project. You know what I mean? Whatever concept of that look like. If it was like more painterly or more 3D, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but that's the idea, right? Just think about those things and push that forward, right? Okay, this is like a like my fantasy version of like Charmeleon. What does he look like? Hold up, let me see. Charmeleon. That's how you spell Charmeleon. He basically is. Let's go, dude. We'll do that. We'll do something fun like that. Anyway, I'm not gonna do like straight up Charmeleon fan art, but we'll be inspired, right? I guess you can't do fire on a tail without people thinking, oh, that's a Charmander. Sorry, my cat's like freaking out. Rooney, what do you want? It's always when I'm streaming too. Always. They're quiet throughout the day and they're like, Dad's talking. And then there you go. Alright. So we're getting somewhere. It's working out, right? Things that are changing, right? So I'm somewhere in the design process, right? I'm doing a thing. It's in a place, right? And so I'm making adjustments based off of what I'm designing here, because when I started this, I had the idea to make the same tone slash, I guess, color mood as this kind of like dreary kind of landscape. Like, it's not like dreary, but it's like this like northern European Nordic kind of area, right? Where it's like kind of like wet, right? Foggy-esque, but then in this case it's kind of sunny at this moment. And so I wanted to hit that landscape, but then as I'm like going further into this, I'm thinking, well, there's going to be like these fires, like, you know, and what's the best time to show a fire, right? Usually in a darker setting. And so I'm going to kind of make those adjustments. I'm going to start painting this in a more darker setting, because I want some of those things to pop off just a little bit more, right? So as you're making your painting, as you're designing, right, make adjustments. Understand that, yes, you know, we have a plan going into it, and you always want to have a plan, but you don't need to 100% stick to it, right? It's not the end all be all of the design. You don't, like, if something is kind of going a certain way, that's fine. But just understand, right? You can make the adjustments that you need because you are an artist. You know, you adjust accordingly. I think so many times I've seen projects where it's like, oh, I had this idea to do this thing, right? To kind of make this thing happen or whatever. And I'm like, oh, why don't you just adjust this? They're like, oh, I didn't think of that. You know, it's just because you kind of like, you get tunnel visioned, right? You get locked into whatever it is that you're doing. Make the adjustments. Understand that it's okay to, you know, just deviate from paths, right? It's fine to do that. So cool. Let's see what else we got here. Any other questions? What's going on in the art student sphere, guys? What's the thing? What's the business?
Norris is cooking kids in Form Language 1 right now. They're talking over here in the chat about how they just can't do all this work.
You know,
it is a lot of work, but it is a lot of work. But to me, like, Form Language 1 is the core. I don't want to say core. It's what concept art's all about. It's like what separates the drawers from the designers, you know. So I mean, yeah, it's gonna be hard.
What's his assignment?
12 pages of work. So it's this is week 2 character stuff. So it's pick a kind of character. For me, it's like a robot. So that's a page of reference, page of robot studies, and then he wants 6 pages with 6 to 8 designs each, where you take square, you kind of make square-ish designs, circle designs, triangular designs, then combine those. Then from there you do a page of studying a form language, which you pick. Then you write out keywords and you apply those keywords to some of your designs. And you take 8 of your designs and you make them more specific using keywords. So it might be, so mine's like robot plus mushroom, so it might be splitting. So I've got to apply the splitting keyword to that design. So it's 12 pages total. I guess like 11 of them are drawing.
It's easy. It's easy, guys. You guys are freaking out too much. John, because I took basically form language with him, and like we'd show up to class, right? It was basically, so the class that we took was I think it was called environment sketching. It was super generic sounding, but it was basically form language plus world building 1 like combined, like the way he had it, right? And so like we would like, he'd give us an assignment. He goes, "Oh, I want 100 thumbnails, like lighting design thumbnails of this project." I was like, "What the hell?" Sounds like, and just graphite, just like he's like, just get the copy paper, just go, right? And we turned it in 100, and all of us were like stayed up late that night, and then just, you know what I mean? Like, we just pulled the all-nighter, and we were just dying the next day whenever it came to like, you know, the day we need to submit it, right? And then he goes, cool, 100 more. We're like, what the fuck? You know, like it was crazy. We're like, but it was cool because like now I think something that was fun was like, at the time it was hell. Don't get me wrong, it sucked. I was like, do I want to do this? Do I enjoy art? But like, we would be doing it, and then at the time it sucks. At the time it's the worst experience you've ever had, and it makes you question your sanity. Like, do I want to get paid for this? And then after, like, in hindsight now, I'm like, oh yeah, like that skill of just generating ideas is so invaluable. Like, just being able to like come up with an infinite number of designs, you know what I mean? It, for me, is like one of the biggest skills that you could possibly have. Like, just knowing how to come up with designs, because it's not a creativity thing more often than not, right? There is a level of creativity that needs to be had when it comes to like designing, right? Absolutely. But a lot of it really is like, do you have a system that kind of makes it so that you can create a design just without fail? You know what I mean? And that was like something we had to learn like real quick in class. And I think that was an assignment that I don't ever want to do again. I'm not going to do it again, but it was nice to like, it was nice that we had to do it. You know what I mean? So these assignments, like a lot of it is because to be able to generate ideas, for those of you that have never done it before, and it's crazy, you're a sane person for not having done it. Don't get me, you know what I mean? Like, you're correct to not do it. But when you do it, it really makes it, I don't know, it changes you as an artist. It really like makes you able to kind of figure things out a lot easier, and your kind of career from there, right? It's, everything kind of gets a lot simpler, because if you've done 100, right, 5 thumbnails is nothing, you know, and you'll even do like double to triple that just to kind of make sure that you get the idea right, you know. That sounds fun though. I'm glad Norris is keeping up the tradition. That sounds terrible. What's my
And
worst?
he's so good.
What's
I'm
my
so
worst
like
assignment?
just envious of
Go ahead.
your worst assignment.
Yeah.
I was just saying I'm so envious of Norris's draftsmanship. Like he's just such a like natural with the pencil, in my opinion. Like he just you can see that like all of that practice and all of that education has paid off for him, which has made it very inspiring to like keep working.
Yeah. Yeah, he's good.
I think you're black and white. You're black and white. The black and white stuff is hard because for people who want to do illustration, I'm talking like black and white keyframes.
Mm-hmm.
For people who want to do illustration, it's not very sexy at the beginning when you're doing the fundamentals, and you really have to ask yourself, like, am I willing to learn the fundamentals first before it looks good? And I think you're really good at showing how the black and white can look good with just a little bit of work. But in doing that, in those assignments, I mean, they were hard for me.
Like, I guess the graphic read stuff, or the lighting stuff?
The graphic read stuff and the lighting stuff kind of put together. Just I don't know, the first few weeks in your terms, you ground it down to the absolute fundamentals. So it's, you know, making sure your value structure's sound, and then making sure that you can light, when you set up a lighting, it's a consistent lighting across the whole scene. And you're kind of starting with more basic building blocks in those first few weeks. You're not making a super beautiful design. And so doing the fundamental work, I feel like it's just, every class is going to have its like fundamental stage that grinds on people, and that's what it was for me with you.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's I think a big a fundamental difference between like my class and like Norris's class, right, is like Norris gets well, I mean, he gets a range of people, but his class is AD1, right? The idea is it's one of the earlier classes you should be taking. You should technically take, for those that don't know, you should take that class before you take, I guess, my old class. I don't teach that class anymore, but you should have taken that class before you took my class, because it's more of like a kind of weeding out class, right? It's a lot of work because he's kind of getting the earliest students, right? And the people that like maybe they're a little less serious about it, maybe they're not really truly understanding what this is about. You know what I mean? And so like when he gives an assignment, it kind of serves double duty, right? For me, it's more intermediate level students. You kind of generally know why you're there or what you're supposed to be doing, and so I don't have to worry so much about that, right? Like I don't have to weed people out as much. Not that I even want to be honest, but it's a lot of that. I think there's a depending on what, like the earlier level classes, it's always like how do you get the serious students to come out, or how do you change people's perception of what this is? Because a lot of people come into this thinking that, oh, it's art, it's this like flowy thing, I can be whatever about it, right? There's, you know what I mean, there's a mentality behind, like, I guess earlier art students, that when you're in a design class, you don't quite understand that, but it is what it is. Cool. So like going to this real quick, right? I do want to show like how, oops, sorry, hit the mic. I do want to show like how much I really focus on the silhouette. If it does not look good here, right? At the very least, look passable. Like things are reading, things are okay. You can, understand what we're looking at. If you don't have something that works at this stage, don't keep going, right? I think that's a big problem that we see so often where it's like, I'll fix it as we go. You know what I mean? It's like there's certain things that, yes, you can fix. There absolutely is, right? Just remember, right, as you're doing this, you have to kind of hit certain checkpoints, right? And this is why, like, I put so much emphasis on doing your, I guess, understanding your foundations and knowing what your process is, right? Every process, every step, before I can say I want to move on and do let's say like my lighting phase, for example, right? I need to make sure that my graphic read stage works and I know what that entails, because once I start painting like volume, right, we're kind of officially moving into the lighting phase at that point. But if my graphic read stage doesn't look good, what's the point? There's 0 point to like painting this any further, because you're just wasting time at that point, right? And so every time I do this, every time you paint or anybody here, just know that about yourself, right? Know that when you do a certain thing, it doesn't have to be the same exact process that I do. If you need to kind of push that a bit further, that's fine, right? That's not a big deal. But if you have exactly like the steps within whatever category, my thumbnailing stage has this, and this, I need to make sure those checkboxes work. If you can do that, you're going to be in such a good position, because now I'll hand people like thumbnails like this, right? Because some people, like, whenever you do thumbnails, they'll give like full renders sometimes. It's like, oh, I didn't know where to stop. But knowing that, it's like, oh, they just need the pose, they need the graphic read, they need the general idea, and they're probably good to go at that point, right? Like your client will, usually a lot of my clients can see this as a first, the artistic clients. Non-artistic clients, that's a different thing. We'll talk about that later if you want. But for artistic clients that know what they're doing in terms of art skill, right? This is something that they would be okay seeing, because they can tell that it's just a sketch, right? They can tell that we're just trying to figure out shapes. But then after that, I'll start kind of pushing this further and doing my thing, right? So. But it's like a waste of time, because if I spend more time trying to make this look good, then it's like, it's just wasting time at that point. I could have spent more time figuring out like other stuff, you know what I mean? So in the Discord chat, it says, are you teaching any classes at the moment, Kenny? Where might I check your classes out? I'm not teaching any class right now. I'm actually taking a break from teaching. I guess it sounds weird saying it as I'm live streaming right now, teaching in courses, but I'm more kind of like just doing my own thing right now. So I'm taking a break from teaching at like places at the time being, because I was teaching like 3 or 4 classes at one point. But at the moment it's just live streams. So that may or may not change. I'm kind of working on some ideas right now just to figure things out. But for now, the biggest reason that I actually was taking a break from teaching was because for everyone, for those that don't know, I moved, so I couldn't like commit to teaching because I didn't know what my situation was going to be like. So I just decided to take that break, and it'd been like 4 or 5 years, so I was like, I'm probably due for one of those. I'm trying to like figure this out. Like I need to see some reference, right? I need to see like how do people like make this design, like, because what I don't want. Let's see. So like, I'm looking at like Hades, for example. Like, how do they do that, right? What do they design? What are they thinking about? Like, it's just hair, for example, right? I get that. But like, I'm trying to make it not seem so froey. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe it doesn't even have to be fire, right? It could be something else. But the idea would be like, how do we design this? Because right now it kind of feels like this. It feels like it's, and that's fine when he's doing certain things. But I think like in a more natural state, it feels normal. And so like trying to figure out like what that looks like, how do we work that, what that balance is, because the graphic read, just make sure that works out fine. Those artists, like one of the artists that I'm referencing more closely, right? Especially so for those of you that are in a zone of like discomfort, if you're somebody that maybe doesn't really do this that often in terms of like this type of illustration or whatever subject that you end up choosing, right? Find reference, just find artists and be like, how did they do it? Artists that you're aiming towards, right? There's certain artists, there's all sorts of different artists out there that have all sorts of different styles. And so when you're doing this, look for artists that you're kind of like, I want it kind of towards this way, right? And if I were to like, in an ideal world, I would be able to post my image on, Alex Konstad's Instagram, and it would hopefully fit in. Obviously he's, disgustingly good. But it's like making sure that at the very least it fits in with some of these pieces here, like, more in line with like some of these, right? It kind of has that same tone and vibe, and it kind of shows you like how far he'll take certain things, like, like seeing some of the features, like the hands, the lighting, how detailed some of these things get, right? There's a not as high detail comparatively to like some of these are like super high in detail, right? And it's like, is that something I want to go for? Maybe. I don't know. Probably, to be honest. Or like even the detail in here, like some of his newer works that I'm seeing, it's like there's a different quality to it, right? I don't know if it's new or not, but I mean, it's 143 weeks old, but it's at the very least, it looks newer than some of these other ones. And so like trying to find that like that quality bar for yourself, because now you know what to aim for, right? If you don't know what you're aiming for, it's really hard to hit a target, right? So that's cool. Sick. Let's see, let's put that back. Oh. All right. Let's I think it's working out. I don't know how you guys feel about this. What's the consensus? Is this trash? Do I need to start over? Oh, he's clear. It's the John Cena dragon. Anyway. Alright, let's get some lighting on this thing. Actually, let me fix that dude. He's very not duding correctly. I want that back arm to be holding this here. Maybe he's holding the reins. I want it to be kind of chill like that. Let's see. I want this body to go like this. Oops, there you go. Be a cut, flip that horizontal. And the cool part about this is, if you're ever like struggling, like especially for those that like, maybe you don't like do figure drawing as much, but you have like a certain level of art to you, right? Like, I think something that I like to keep in mind, right, is that you might not know how exactly to do certain figures and certain things, right? Absolutely. That's if you don't have the practice to do it, it's fine, right? Just understand that. But there's ways to kind of make it so you can, at the very least, get something that's like roughly close, right? Like, I'm not exactly the fastest when it comes to doing figures and various things like that. I can do it for sure, but what I like to do instead is design the silhouette, right? Because I can get those proportions correct. I can get those things, get the overall shape working out okay. Because a lot of this stuff inside, it becomes a distraction, right? You get very distracted by how some anatomy things work, how some of these planes or whatever works, right? And not getting and not focusing on like the bigger picture, right? For those that are like, good at this and you do this normally, that's fine, you do your thing. But for those that are like maybe struggle a little bit more with some of these more natural feeling objects or things, like think about how can you make that graphic read silhouette look correct, because from there, once you get that good, everything else kind of works out usually pretty okay. You know what I mean? Like it's usually fine at that point, but it just takes a second to kind of get there. But I find myself getting very distracted whenever I'm just worrying about like how the arm works, but I haven't really figured out how that body works. You know what I'm saying? So. Sick. Working out. Let's go, dude. Let's see. We're not gonna tank this month, guys. We're 10 months in, and I think maybe like 1 or 2 demos didn't turn out as good as I hoped. So that's pretty good odds, right? I guess I did miss like 2 months in that, but that's not the worst. He's got his acrylics on. Let's go, dude. I think that's working. I think that's working out okay. How often do you guys paint outside of your comfort zone? I was curious. For those of you like listening and like hanging out in the Discord or whatever, like, what's like, how often do you feel like you jump out of your comfort zone to like, I don't know, address some of these issues? Is it a consistent thing? Is it a every once in a while, or is it like a never? I won't ever do that. The birthday hat, that's weird.
Not enough.
That's
for
enough.
sure.
I don't do it as much as I should either. Like, I'll do it for work, and I think that's something that, like, for everybody, like, it happens a lot because in a work scenario, I'm forced to do it, right? Like, they're like, hey, we're paying you to do this, and you're the only artist around right now, right? And so, like, I guess figuring out like how to get yourself through it is super important. I think like having the ability to not paint everything perfectly. That's not what we're looking for, right? Like, I mean, yeah, you want that, right? That's where we want to be, right? But like, it's more about being able to troubleshoot your way out of things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't always know how to draw or paint certain things. You know what I mean? I'm not the best at certain things, certain topics, right? But I know how to get myself out of scenarios. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I've been tasked with like painting like writer type things, like this, for example, right? Like this, I mean, not this exact painting, but things like this, right? And I'm like, I don't do creatures or characters or illustrations like this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not your guy. And they're like, well, it's either that or we let you go because we don't have a use for you right now. I'm like, oh no, I'll take the job. I'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we'll see how this goes, you know? And it's, little things like just understanding like how all these pieces kind of fall together, I find is like the skill that you want, you know what I mean? Especially like look at that, right, where I had a design, I had like, you know, whatever, there's this little like thing on the back of the head or whatever. I'm just trying to figure out some shapes right now, but it's kind of like tangenty with this guy, so like just making sure that I just make that adjustment, you know, little things like making sure that when I add that arm in the back, I'm keeping that hole for the arm to make sure we see that silhouette nicely. Making sure that like I moved this leg back here towards, it was like here in the beginning, and I kind of moved it back just to get that cleaner silhouette, have it feel like it's actually walking, you know. Things like that, it goes a long way in learning how to just see images. I think one of the biggest things that we had especially as a studio in the beginning, whenever I first started working, was it was like there's only so many people here, right? There's only so many artists currently at the studio, and so like whenever a task comes in, you kind of just have to do it, you know, because you know, my art director, creative director would ask like, oh yeah, so we have this character. We had this character come in for an assignment. You know, who wants it, right? Because there was like 5 of us, 6 of us, right? And like, I was always designated as the character artist, right? They were like, oh, the character's here, yeah, give it to Kenny, right? And I'm like, you guys know I'm an environment designer, just like you guys, right? You know, like I specialize in environments, like you, right? Like that's, you know. But I just had to do it because that was just the goal. Somebody had to, right? There's only 5 of us, and so it's just like figuring it out, you know, just learning, like seeing that. Don't try to see your shapes as a creature. Don't try to see your shapes as a character. See your shapes as just like it's just another shape in an environment, in a scene, on a composition, right? You think leading lines, you think, you know, graphic design, big, medium, small shapes, right? Interesting forms, and then from there, like some of the pose things, yeah, it takes some understanding to get that right, but overall, it's like it's not that crazy, you know. Let's see. Cool. Check that out. So that's about it for the graphic read stage. This is kind of at a point to where I'm like, I'm cool to move on. Let me group this together. Let me organize this so I'm not so like. Oh, it's raining. Cool. Let me see. Boom. Where's that line drawing at? What's this? What are you? Cool. That's a back. Nope. I don't need that back leg right now. All right. There you go. Sick. I'll just delete that right there. I'm gonna move that back in. Put this at the bottom. Let's go. So, this is kind of where I would be, right? This is like where I would kind of keep this in terms of like a graphic read stage. I'll save this out just so we can kind of see it later on. I can kind of show you like the steps that it took to kind of get there. But like when I'm doing this, right, I just want everyone to kind of see like how far we actually take things and what's important and what's not, right? I think one of the best things that I've ever done, right? One of the strongest skills that I've, I guess, learned to have, right, is just knowing where to stop at a certain phase. If you don't know where to stop, it's really hard to like check yourself, right? Because, you know, checking your progress and like having good checkpoints really helps you understand where you're at and how far you need to go and what you need to correct and why and where you can't move on before getting into like the next stage, right? I can't figure out the anatomy if I don't even have the pose and the graphic read correct, right? Yeah, there's some design things I need to fix, like some of the flame stuff, some of the face stuff, whatever, just to make it look interesting and cool. But as a whole, right, it's more about like, you know, how do I make this at the very least work at a fundamental level before kind of moving on. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully that makes sense. I want this to be wider. There you, something like that. So I need to delete some of this stuff. Yeah, that's better. Yeah. How's it going, Discord? How's life? How's the art journey been for you? Does anybody like the art journey? Does anybody enjoy it right now? I know it's like a tough time to say that, but I'm just curious.
I mean, I enjoy it.
That's one.
It's we all got into this for a reason, right? Like I've learned that more and more as I talk to people. Everybody has their thing, you know. I got into drawing very, very late. I started drawing when I was like, gosh, I think about 15 or 16.
Nice.
And I was absolutely terrible. I had friends who were so much more talented than I was, but I just enjoyed it, you know.
Yeah.
So everybody has their thing. I mean, I feel like nobody said anything, but I feel like everybody here must love to draw to some degree, or paint, or whatever it is you do.
Yeah, you have to, right? I think like, because I started pretty late too, because I didn't. I mean, I had been drawing since I was a kid, right? But I never like, I didn't do any like real training. It was mostly just like me doing like copies of like anime stills and I don't know, just like doodling in my book or in my notebook because I was like just not paying attention in class, or you know, just the normal like kid shit, you know. And I didn't start like getting serious about like actually learning how to draw until I was like 19, you know, like older than a lot of people kind of start, right? Because usually at that point you're kind of like already into doing whatever it is that you like doing, you know what I mean? Like you're at 19, you already graduated high school, so like, or in America at the very least, I think most places, to be honest, but it's, you know, I'm just kind of like, I don't know, just like I was just kind of like floating around in college, right? I really wasn't, not that I wasn't doing anything, I wasn't doing anything like substantial, right? And I think like I kind of fell back onto art. I think that was something that was like something that I was like, oh, I did like doing this as I was a kid, and I was generally speaking better than the average, right, when it came to like high school. Like, cause I mean, shit, everybody here, like, there's like 10 people, 15 people in the live stream chat right now, like, and that's just in the Discord side. Like, I bet you most people here were probably that artist in their school, right? Them among, you know, you're probably one of the top few that, you know, you just drew, and it's not because you were academically trained in art. It's just because you're probably just drew more as a kid. You know what I mean? Like that's usually all it is. And so I didn't start until I was like 19, and it was like I didn't even know it could kind of be a thing. You know what I mean? And I think once I kind of got that first taste of like art school, I think that's kind of when I started liking it more. You know what I mean? Like realizing what the I guess potential was. I think like a class like a Norris class, like we were talking about earlier, right? Where it's kind of like weeding out people that are a little less serious. I felt that a class like that was super important for me because it was a class that kind of shows you what this is all about, I think. You know what I mean? Because I think like when I was doing a lot of like, when I was at University of Houston, I was taking some graphic design classes because that's all we had in terms of entertainment. I wanted to do entertainment design, but all we had was graphic design classes. So it's like I was just doing that, and then I just didn't like it. You know what I mean? Like we were just doing like fucking like still lifes and stuff all day, and I didn't really understand why, right? Because I think I'm a big believer. I don't say believer, but I'm really into knowing why I'm doing something, right? Like it's hard for me to mindlessly do something, right? If you haven't noticed from every single thing I talk about, from even like doing the studies, knowing why you're doing it, right? It's a lot of like I don't really quite know why I was doing it, and it was just kind of felt like just busy work at the end of the day. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was. I think for that first little bit, taking those weed out classes was a really like pivotal kind of moment for me, you know. Boom. Let's see. Let's get some like better design skills up in here. Oops. Cool. I'm working a little bit slower today. I rearranged some of my brushes. I just kind of like deleted some of the ones I don't ever use anymore, and it's been like it throws you off. It's like it's crazy. It's funny how used you can get to like clicking a certain part of the screen. Oops. Is that it? Yeah, this is it right here. Wait, hold up. Sick. Let's go, dude. That's kind of fun. I like where that's going. Let's so at this point we're in a decent phase for me to kind of start setting up the lighting and not the light, yeah, the lighting and mood, right? So from here, from this graphic read stage, right, this is, you know, hopefully you saw kind of how I did that. It's really not that crazy. It's mostly just getting your shape design to look okay. A lot of things are gonna be fixed. I'm gonna have to adjust a lot of things for sure, but making sure like that harness looks fine, making sure like, you know, the saddle looks okay, making sure, you know, some of these things kind of work out. From here, I'm going to start kind of setting up my mood and tone using the color reference that we gathered from last week, right? So, reference, is this it? Yeah. So, this is the folder that I had. I don't think I added anything to it since last week. I was going to go with this tone right here. That's why I did that study. But now that I'm like looking at it, I'm thinking like, what if one of my darker tones, like that's not a bad tone, or like these aren't bad tones. Shit, I think I just use these to be honest, because they're like, they're kind of like that darker. I don't want it nighttime. I just want it darker to where it like the sun's not so prominent and the everything's kind of more in shadow. That way it kind of pops off this this character / creature design a bit more. This one's not bad, but I don't like how red that is, you know? This isn't bad either. Let's see. Oh, did I get a message? No, it's a friend request. Screw it. You'll have to wait. Damn, Brienne like walking around gangster, just chopping people up. Let's see.
Something that Sid Mead said about this like black and white stage that you're in is he said it's in his Noman tutorials talking about doing the thumbnails and how important they are, and he said if it looks good at this very simple graphic black and white stage, it's going to look really good when we've done the color and the rendering and everything.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that, because I'm always so tempted when I don't like something, a design, to say, well, I'll just like rush through some color and some rendering on it, and that always makes it look better. But it's that fundamental black and white breakup that really is, you know, the foundation of it, and that's really where a good designer knows it's going to look good or not.
Yeah, whenever I first started, like started working, right, not just like doing art, but like even in like into a professional field, I was so hung up on like yo, give me a second, let me add, you know, lighting, let me add like color, let me add these things, and to be real, right, I didn't figure this shit out until like I think a year into me teaching. You know what I mean? Like actually like doing the process, like showing like step by step, like me breaking it down for people, showing like, hey, this is how I do it, right? And it was how I did it, like how I thought about it. I think like the first maybe like 6 months of me teaching, right? Not even just like brainstorm class, but like mentorship classes as well. I was doing mentorship classes before I was teaching brainstorm classes, but it was a lot of like, I thought this way, right? The way I teach now is the same exact process that I taught then, but I didn't like do it 100%. I kind of thought this way, but I didn't like stop and actually like, you know, walk through it. Because for those that know, like if you've taken my class before, you know that I like physically stop at certain steps, like the black and white phase that I had, or the graphic read stage I just showed everybody. I stop there, right? I don't go any further because I don't allow myself to go further because I don't allow you guys to go any further, right? And so like I was doing a lot of that, and it just kind of like dawned on me. I'm like, oh yeah, I could just do this for work. And then my work quality just got so much better. It was crazy. Like just understanding like how to actually, I don't know, put an image together. You know what I'm saying? It sounds crazy because it's like, don't you teach this? What the hell's wrong with you? You know what I mean? It's like, what's happening here? Like, how are you just now figuring this out as a professional that had been working for like 6 years at that point? Like I wasn't like a new professional by any means. But it was like reinforcing some of those ideas, which was really helpful for me. I went through a big growth period when I had to really like physically break down my steps, and I wrote it, right? Like it sounds, I never like sat down and like step by step thought it through. And I had to physically like rearrange some of my process because there'd be times where I kind of like made this blobby form and then I started like kind of rendering some light. I'm like, why am I doing that? If the form doesn't look good, then like if the shape doesn't look good, the form's not gonna look good because I don't have anything to base the form off of because I'm looking at the shape, right? It's like a lot of those things, and just I guess figuring out all that. It took a second, but I got to a point to where I was able to consistently make images to kind of what you're seeing now. It's a lot of me just like, just like you see me stop at certain points. It's because I know how to do this, right? I've been practicing it a bit more, and it's so important for everybody. Like if I know, hopefully, I know that everybody takes it seriously when I say some of these things. Like you're like, hey, like Kenny said this, so apply it or whatever. But like, I think there's cause even I do this all the time where it's like I hear it and I take it seriously. I don't doubt it by any means. I just don't apply it as literally. You know what I mean? Like I don't sit down and like write like, okay, so if I was doing, like when I look at my painting, this is when I did this step, this is when I did this step, and I kind of like break that down. I like did that for my process because I needed to figure out how to explain it to other people. And that alone, oh dude, it was crazy. Like just you're realizing, oh, that's dumb. Like why'd you do that, right? Because in the moment, it feels fine, right? It's not like okay, but it feels fine. And then whenever you're actually like trying to teach that to somebody, they won't get it. Because for one, it's just nonsense, right? It doesn't necessarily make sense. It's not exactly a sound process, and so when you try to explain that to somebody, they're usually going to be lost. And that was a big thing that I had to figure out, right? Just how this process works, and really taking seriously every step of the process, knowing that yes, I can make adjustments, but there's some adjustments that I don't want to make, right? I don't want to make, big silhouette / composition adjustments during like my rendering phase because it's a waste of time. Then you start moving backwards. You know what I mean? So, or even like I would paint like the cloud layer. In this case, it's like a smoke layer, but I would paint like the cloud layer on top of like the background layer. But then I would need those clouds to be able to render later. I'm like, wait, why did I do that? That's dumb, dude. You know what I mean? It's just like that's not smart behavior, But it is what it is. I need to figure out this. I've been using a rake a lot. I don't know. Do you guys use rakes? I've been using rakes like a ton. I think mostly because of work, but I think Yun's been converting me. I'm like, rakes are cool, aren't they? Rakes aren't. Oh my god, everything's chugging. I'm sorry. I'm working at a pretty big file size.
I'm curious, Kenny, whether you feel like your rates have been kind of not moving forward as much as you would like, considering the industry's been moving like a little slower. I'm looking for some new clients, and I've been thinking about what I'm going to tell them when they ask what I charge. And I feel like my skills have improved and it's time to go higher. But, the competition's out there, yada, yada, yada. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I guess like whenever I up my rate, like I haven't done that in a while, but um, it's whenever I up my rate, it's usually in response to a client, right? So for example, if I worked for a client, at the beginning, I was doing like a lot lower level clients, right? Like just easy illustration stuff or mostly like 2D assets. Like I painted some stuff for what was that Marvel Snap or something. No, it wasn't Snap. It was something else. But anyway, it was like these kind of character sprites or whatever, right? Just super simple stuff. And the rate is pretty low on that, right? Just because, it's not really that hard of work, and it's really, you can't really charge that much for that type of work essentially. And so the rate was pretty low. But then I would get a job for, a studio that's like one notch higher, right? So I just priced myself one notch higher. And, the range, let's say you start off, because I started off at 35, right? And that's like the low end for that like mobile studio, right? And then, you bump up a notch. It's like, well, let's aim for 40. Aiming for 40 means pitching 45, right? Like for everybody, right? When you're negotiating your rates, right? $5 higher usually isn't a break it kind of deal, right? Like, because I think a big thing that happens is we're all afraid that like it's like, oh, if I say this number, the clients are gonna run away because they're not going. It's like $5 is not gonna make them like stop emailing you. You know what I mean? Like if I said like if we're kind of looking in like the $50 range and I say like 100, yeah, you might not get a response, right? But if they're looking in the $50 range, you say 55, you're fine. Or even if that's 60, they're like, we kind of max out at like, we're kind of looking in the $55 range, right? Try it, see how it goes. Nudge that number a bit higher. Or a big thing as well is talk to a friend that's worked at this place or does like similar work, right? Where it's like, oh, I haven't worked for this studio specifically or done this work specifically, but I have, I've done work in an adjacent studio, something that's like in a similar realm. They're competitors, so to speak, right? Their price ranges are probably going to be roughly similar, right? Not always, but roughly similar. And so when you put those numbers together, right? Like ask somebody, hey, you worked here, you did this work. Well, what did that cost you? And if you don't know, right, just that's you kind of pioneering out and figuring it out, and now right? But just know that like if you're within $5 to $10 ranges of like whatever is happening, right? They'll probably be okay with you. More often than not, it's fine. It's not a big deal, And one thing that I kind of started realizing that in the beginning is if you charge too low, that's also a big deal, just because now they're like, wait, why is he so cheap? It's like, we're expecting, a $50-$60 person for a job like this. He's charging 20. When you see a sale that's too good, you know what I mean? You're like, wait, what's wrong with this guy? You know what I mean? Like what's the issue here? That's a big kind of thing to understand too. You can't charge too low either, because you're like, oh, if they saw a deal for, $20, they're sure to take it because I need this job. It's like they might not. They're going to be like, no, let's go with somebody with a little more experience because this person doesn't seem like they have a lot, right? So that's a thing too, right? Just kind of remember, just play with those ideas. But something that I really try to do as I'm going through my career and stuff is, every time you have a certain level of studio under you, right? Just remember that number, because now when you go to a studio that's like similar, right? If I'm working at Netflix, for example, and then I go to a place that does animation, similarly or something, I'm going to give them my Netflix price. And they say, oh, that's pretty high. right? I mean, well, that's what they paid me here, right? And it's not like devious or anything. It's just that's what they paid me. You know what I mean? That's what they gave me at this studio, and I'm not expecting a super raise. I'm just looking for a match, and usually they'll. It's a little more, in my experience, a little more forgiving, right? Because if they're like, if you're somebody that's like worked for just like, let's say 40 an hour, right? Just like entry level rates, and then you you know, you're like charging 80. They're like, what makes you think you can charge 80? You're like, I just wanted 80. You know, it's hard to like justify that. I mean, it could happen, absolutely. I'm not, you know, there's 80 is not crazy high when it comes to you know, like mid to senior level artists. But just know that like if you have if you have a reason to kind of back it up, it makes kind of I don't want to say explaining it, right? Because you're not trying to explain your rate, but there is a level of like, oh wait, that's really high, you know, and you just kind of like you justify it a little bit, and they'll kind of understand, you know what I mean? So it's really, I would say every year you should probably bump up maybe like $5, $10, right? You know, every year if you're kind of moving at an average pace. Some people bump up way higher than that, way faster than that, which is totally fine. I'm not saying you can't do that, but you know, just things to kind of keep in mind as you're progressing, right? You shouldn't really be stuck with the same rate for too long. Not in those earlier years, at the very least. Later on, like once you're senior and above, your rates kind of plateau. Not because you're not I guess worth more or less. It's more of their studios are less willing to pay at a certain point because they've never paid that high for this role before. Depending on what it is. If you're somebody that is like, you know, super impactful, super important, yeah, you know, that's fine, right? But generally speaking, we're not talking about those types of people right now. You know what I'm saying? Is he red? Is red weird? Red's gonna be weird. Blue's weird too. Blue doesn't stand out. Red feels better. Yeah, that's better. Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, rates is a weird one. Wait, rates is Yo, later, Braid. Rates is like, it's a really hard like terrain to navigate because it can be so like it can be so difficult to like really figure out those things, you know. It can be so hard to be like, you know, because it can feel greedy sometimes, especially if like for those on like the more on the nicer side, it can kind of feel greedy, you know. It's like, I don't think it, you know, I like doing this, you know what I mean? And they'll be like, oh yeah, you like drawing, right? And it's a lot of that stuff on top of the fact that like, you know, you're not, generally speaking, our skill isn't negotiation. Our skill is drawing and painting. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're good at the art side. So the negotiation side is kind of like falls to the wayside a little bit. Because, you know, I would say, generally speaking, right, artists are on the nicer end of that spectrum, right? We're not, most people aren't like super greedy about it. And so, it's, you know, it's this weird game. I don't really, to be honest, I hate like sitting in that room like negotiating with people because it's like, I just want to draw and paint, man. Just give me what I'm asking for. And I try not to charge anything that's like super unfair, right? Where it's like I'm just like, hey man, like I'm just on the higher end of what's normal for this role. Like I'm not asking like quadruple the amount for something that you guys have never paid before, you know. But I don't know. Maybe I just suck at negotiating. Who knows?
I guess my biggest goal is just getting to AAA where the rates standardize a little bit more. I've had jobs this year where I'm working literally double the rate for some jobs that I am for other jobs. And the client who I'm doing double for, I bill them for a ton of hours and they're like, this is awesome. Like, we love what you're doing. And the client I'm billing half for, they're like, why are you billing for this? Why are you billing for this?
Yeah.
I think that's just a matter of working with indies, you know? And once you get to AAA, maybe there's a little bit more of a standard expectation.
So I will this I something that everyone should know as you're going into like progressing from smaller studios to bigger studios. That jump is not as high as you might think. A big problem that I run into a lot, and I'll fight them for this too. Like I'll be like, "No, you're paying me this much," right? Because some studios they think that it's a privilege for you to work at this place, so we'll give you a little bit less. I'm not calling out specific studios like Treyarch or various places like that, but they'll like from a lot of the artists that I know, they'll get paid like pennies. I'm like, how are you a senior level concept artist making like less than 70? Like how does this work? Or, you know what I mean? Not specific numbers, but it's like how are you pretty high up and you're only making this much, right? A lot of big studios think that it's okay to pay you less because it's a privilege for you to work there, right? And I'm really not okay with that. I feel, it's something that it happens a lot, right? And you kind of have to stand your ground, but also understand that it's really easy for them to find people that will do the work for cheaper, right? Because imagine anybody here, anybody, if they said, "Hey, I want you to work on the next God of War," most people are going to jump at that. Most people are going to be like, "Yeah, dude, I'll do whatever. I'll do it for free. I just want to weigh in." You know what I mean? And that happens, right? And that's, good or bad, right? It happens. And so with a lot of the bigger studios, they can get away with stuff like that because, they have people to replace. Smaller studios, it's not that they don't have the people to do that. Obviously, everybody's looking for opportunities and, so on and so forth. But it's a lot harder for them to get away with stuff like that because, for one, the talent pool becomes a lot less. And then, it's, and as well as, sometimes like some places outside of like entertainment, right? They actually don't know what to price us at, because I was working for a marketing company, not like directly, just contracting through them. I was doing some stuff for a marketing company a while back, and then it's not that they didn't know, it's just that like their normal rates is so much higher than what we're used to, right? And luckily I knew somebody, they called me in to this person like helped me out got me this job or whatever, and like they were like, "Oh yeah, so just charge this much." I was like, "What? That's crazy. Like that's weird how high that is for someone of my level." They're like, "Oh no, that's standard industry rates in marketing, in this thing that we're doing. We just need a concept artist for like this kind of point in time," right? And I was like blown away by how much that was compared to like how much a standard concept artist makes at some of these studios, So just be aware of that. Just know that it does happen where there's a I don't know, there's this thing that bigger studios will do where they just feel like they don't need to pay you as much. If you're okay with that, right, definitely go do it. And there's other benefits to working at a place like that, right? Just understand that when you work at a studio, there's different reasons to work there, right? Just know that. Because you can work at a place because it pays well. You can work at a place because there's artists that can teach you there, right? They kind of like grow your skill set depending on where you're at. And you understand that the value exchange when it comes to working isn't always monetary. Obviously, don't work for free unless it's like I don't want to say don't work for free ever, right? There's times that you can do that, which would be fine. But just know that there has to be a reason for you to be taking a pay cut like this. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're not getting any value out of it, why are you there, right? That's really what it comes down to. If they're not really paying you that high and you're not learning anything, you should probably leave, right? More often than not, you're not leave in a bad way. Just, it's time to move on, right? I think a lot of people kind of forget that you can just do that, right? You can just, move on, find another studio to kind of keep growing in. So just, think about that for everybody, right? Just push those ideas a bit further. Think about like why are you accepting a position like this, right? Sometimes it's just because you need to find work, which is absolutely fine, right? But just know that like have a reason to work there, right? Have a solid reason. It doesn't have to be a some reason that's like, oh yeah, because I want to make a difference. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It's just, oh, I want to learn that this artist works here and I want to learn from them. I want to see what they're about, kind of understand that process a bit more. Or you can also be like, well, I'm trying to bust into AAA games, and maybe the studio isn't exactly what I want out of a studio, but they do AAA game type things, and so I can kind of learn from that. You know what I mean? Or it's like, oh, I'm trying to become an art director at a bigger studio, so I'm going to learn at this smaller studio first, right? There's a lot of things like that you can kind of do that kind of make it worth it. You know what I'm saying? So. Ian says, is this a composition sketch or is this your final composition? Apologies, shut up late. This is, well, I mean, technically speaking, it is my composition sketch. It is, I did figure out the composition in this sketch, but this is just the final one. I'm not going to really push it further past this. If I do make any changes, it's going to be inside of this comp, right? And I'll probably make some changes as I go. But for now, it's like, this is where it's going to be, so. And like I said at the beginning of all this, this session, right, this month really isn't going to be about trying to figure out like the best designs or the best things. I'm just trying to make something and try to do something interesting with the kind of tools that we're talking about, usually applying studies and various things like that. We'll get into more of the rendering study stuff later. But for now, it's mostly like trying to figure out what the hell I'm even going to be drawing and painting. You know what I mean? So, cool. Black eyes? Yeah, black's better. White's weird, right? Glowing eyes, that's too much. This lizard that's on fire. That's realistic, but the eyes? No, that's not what we want. So, for those that are maybe a little less versed in anatomy and various things like that, like what I would highly recommend, what I'm doing here is I'm painting this creature, right, with like local values first, and I'm going to put a multiply layer on top. A big problem that I run into often, right, is that you're kind of like balancing a couple different things. You're balancing like the materials of like, the bottom plane, how it's a little bit lighter, and then the top plane, the scaly side, and various things like that. You're balancing too many things at once, and it gets really hard to actually make this thing work because it gets very spotty, right? And so at this earlier phase, just like what I've done with like the vehicle design, all those things, I'm trying to break this up into bite-sized, manageable pieces. I'm not really good at anatomy, but I can design an overall shape okay, right? I'm not really that good at armor, but I can design an overall appealing shape that if I stay within that parameter, I'm probably going to be okay. And then now, going into the anatomy, I can use a multiply layer to kind of get those shadow planes working correctly, right? Because what's going to happen is this. There's some spots, oops, let me pull up my drawing line. Bah, there you go. There's some spots that, like, for example, there's going to be like a muzzle thing here, right? Going that way or whatever he's doing, right? And so there's going to be a cast shadow that kind of goes from like here or around, or, it's going to interact with both materials, right? The kind of darker red scales and the lighter like tanner underside, right? And so instead of trying to like color pick this and be like, all right, let me make this darker, and then like painting that, and then color picking this and making that darker and painting that, I'm just going to use a multiply layer to kind of get that to feel correct first, and then adjust on top, right? For everybody that's like kind of struggling with a process, of creating like more complex organic objects, I do recommend doing this. because generally speaking, once you get that block out set, it's really easy to paint on top and like make your changes and do whatever. But it's getting to that block out phase that's like, oh, okay, it actually looks like something that's believable. You know, looks like something that actually feels solid. You know what I'm saying? So that's a big thing that I would highly recommend for those that like just do this normally, right? Just do your thing. I'm not talking about you whenever if you're comfortable with the topic. But for those that are like starting off, just kind of like learning how this thing even works as a whole, just know that, right? It's where you can kind of sneak into the realm of like what makes this work. You know what I'm saying? So. Cool. That's fine. We're good. We're good with that. We're fine with that. And things aren't going to look like super realistic at the moment, right? I think a lot of this is me just kind of setting things up and getting it to, you know, kind of feel like I'm in the right zone, right? But from here, right, this is where I'll start kind of figuring out the lighting, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to grab this tone right here. Nope, too dark. Too blue. There you go. And now I'm going to start kind of like figuring out like shapes and like really pushing like what this stuff actually looks like. You know what I mean? So like getting this skin to look fine, I guess. And like finding bottom planes, right? That's cool. Bottom planes be dope. Getting that tail side to be fine, right? Some of that. Getting some of that interior. Boom. Getting that wrist section to look... Is that a wrist? Yeah, I guess that's a wrist. So, just like usual, right? We're just sneaking into like a solid form, right? Like I said, it's so hard to just do this normally. You know what I mean? Like it's so hard to just like, cause some people like, you know, like James Gurney and like all this, they'll paint dinosaurs like fucking nothing, right? For those that are like average, right? For those of you that are like in the more common people realm, as such as I, right? It's sometimes you can't exactly just do it so freely because, you know, you're not used to doing it that way. You know what I mean? You're not really that good at painting out of your comfort zone like that. And so we'll use opportunities like this to kind of sneak into what it feels like to actually be in that space. And so now, right, obviously I'm going to spend way more time making those forms look solid and making that multiply layer anatomically work correctly. But it just gets me in that realm. You know what I mean? I don't have to worry so much about every single thing kind of working out correctly and balancing color, lighting, material, all at the same time. I can just one at a time. It's local colors, then now it's lighting, and then I can focus on materials after that. And then I have a base that I can paint on top of, right? So. Why is he crying? What's going on? He's like, it's almost one, Dad. Cool. Well, it is almost one, though, I will say. Any last questions before we dip out? We're kind of at a phase to where, like, at this point, you know, start taking it for everybody following along, right? Take your designs, start like kind of pushing these ideas, start understanding kind of what it is that you're going for. And start figuring out what that comp is, right? We're not really stopping at the graphic read. You can if you want. I would highly recommend everybody, right? Go through the phases. If you're not confident in your ability to do creature designs and things like that, or whatever it is if you're not confident in your ability to do whatever it is that you're trying to do, draw it first. Take some time. It's not the most impressive drawing we've ever seen, but it is something that kind of shows me where I'm going with this, right? And then after that, blocking out the shapes, making sure everything looks okay, right? Pushing that story a bit further. Now, after kind of color picking and, you know, getting my things set up, I have my local colors down, and I'm gonna start adding lighting in a second, or adding lighting now with my shadow side, and then I'm gonna add my light side in a second after that. But hopefully, this makes sense. Hopefully this is something that like is repeatable and doable for most of you, right? So, but yeah, that's all I got for today. If there's no questions, that's all she wrote. So we have one more week. So next week, right, we have the next stream. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push this a bit further, right? I'm gonna get that base lighting kind of set up, and then we'll start getting into rendering and kind of pushing from there. We do have Lightbox coming out. For those of you gonna be around, right? I am gonna be tabling there. It's gonna be table like 2 something. I'll post something about it a little bit later. But I do have some prints that are coming up. So I just wanted to do like a sneak peek of that. So let's see, hold up, where's it at? Boom. There you go. Boom, boom. Yeah, here you go. Sick. I'll line these up so you can see it all. Can I open these? Actually, I should save this before I like lose it. Boom, don't save that. I'll load these up. So I've been working on some stuff throughout this past month, I guess September. I've been a little bit busy in September, but you get it. Let's see, hold on. Why is it not opening? Unless it's trying. There you go. Sweet. So I have some prints coming out. Every like convention I try to go to, I try to make some new prints. Obviously, I'll explain this one in a second. That one, this one, and this one, and this one. So I have some prints, right? So I'm gonna start with the digital vegetable ones. I am gonna be selling some prints specifically meant for, I guess, promoting more of kind of what we're doing here in the live stream, right? This is obviously, this is from August. This is from the very beginning for those that are watching in week 0. I did a paint. I kind of pushed it a little bit further. There's some ideas that I had. I could talk about that later if you guys want. But I wanted to sell 2 prints to kind of like, just show that, right? The border is a little bigger. That's bleed, but don't worry about that. But yeah, so 2 prints coming out for digital vegetables, and then I had a personal kind of series that I was kind of working on. So as you guys know, I've been in Japan for the last 6 months at this point. Right? 6 months? Yeah, 6 months, and I've been just traveling around. And I kind of wanted to show like, just like casual moments, you know what I mean? Like I do like some of the more like, oh, this is a specific shrine, or this is like a really cool interesting place, or whatever it is, right? But I really like the kind of just the life in a normal place, you know what I mean? Like just a casual like street corner, like these are I've been to these places, right? Like these are like half photo, half like kind of design painting. And so I'm bringing these 7 prints to Lightbox on top of a book, right? So we've been working on a book. I'll announce it formally this week, coming up in a couple days. But I've been working on a book with a bunch of people from the Digital Vegetable Discord. This has been like a year or 2 in the making, so it's been a while. But I am going to be selling a book, a physical book that hopefully is geared towards just helping more beginner artists kind of do their thing. I'll have more announcements once I get a solid book in my hands. But for now, right? If you're gonna be at Lightbox, right? I am selling some prints. Please, stop by. These are places that I've like physically walked inside. This is like the Ukai fishing. Like I was like right next to the boat. We took pictures. This is at a temple in Shiga Prefecture. Most of these are Gifu because this is kind of where I'm at. But yeah, right. So some cool fun prints to definitely see if you guys are interested. The book, we're going to be selling a limited amount of copies, but then we're also going to be doing a digital release later. So if you're looking for a specific digital copy, that will come out. I'll announce that when that happens. But for now, yeah, these are going to be 11 by 14. If you're going to be around, just stop by. But yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing this coming month and at Lightbox in 2 weeks, right? Is that 2 weeks from now? Yeah, about 2-ish weeks, 2.5. So yeah, yeah. So if you guys are interested in some of those, come stop by, say hi. But if you're also like you're not looking for prints or anything, please stop by. I'd love to talk to you, right? Just say hi in person. We're probably gonna be doing a hangout as well, right? So for those that like want to kind of be around and just talk and meet other artists, not just me, but other people that are in the industry as well, please stop by, chat. I'm gonna announce more things in the Discord as we're going through the weeks, just to kind of set up meetups and just kind of like take over restaurants and various things like that. So, but yeah, with that in mind, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out this week. Thank you for hanging out this past year, essentially. And yeah, we're gonna push this illustration further. I'll be done with it by the end of October. Just know that if you want to follow along, there is a Livestream Plus with feedback, right? There's currently like 10 people participating right now. Hopefully we're making like portfolio level images, right? We are hitting towards the end of the year. If you're looking for work and you want to really like get some good work in your portfolio coming up, please, stop by, participate, do the work, right? Even if you do the work, just show it somewhere, right? Just get some eyes on it, get motivated to kind of work. I know it can be pretty hard to like do work, especially when you're on your own, right? That's a big part of what this live stream is about. It really is. Like, it's mostly to get me off of my ass to do stuff outside of work, because if I'm not like doing anything live like this, chances of me painting outside of work is pretty slim. You know what I mean? But now we're like 20 paintings into the year, just because I turned on the camera. You know what I mean? So with that in mind, guys, thanks for hanging out this past this week, and yeah, well, hopefully this illustration turns out okay. We're in like uncomfort zone mode. So all right, guys. Well, I'll see you next week then. Later.
Thanks so much.